guys just start silently just praying for one another in the room right now? That God would open your hearts for real tonight, that He would open your hearts to receive what He wants to put in there. Would you just pray for one another to have courage and willingness to be filled with the love of Jesus? Would you guys pray for me? Would you guys just pray that God would give me the courage and a boldness to share His word and His truth, but with love and compassion? Father, you know, God, what we need. We spend so much time trying to figure out what we need and trying to achieve it on our own, and you just call us to trust you in the midst of that because you already know what we need, God. I pray our hearts would be settled tonight, Jesus, that we would receive what you have, that it would be real, that it would be something that we would take with us out of this room, and it would never fade, it would never go out, the flame that you want to start in us, that it would continue to grow and spread and be contagious in the world. God, we need a real touch from you tonight. It has to be real, Jesus, man. You've got to do it. So to tell you guys the truth, this is a message that I actually, for the most part, shared a few weeks ago. But God had such a powerful effect in the midst of it. And as I've been praying the last few days, I had started working on another message called Living for Messiah's Glory. And the more I kept praying and getting into it and working on it, I just kept getting led back to this place. And so I'm believing that God's got something in this that He wants to share tonight. He wants you guys to understand and get a grasp on this. But I need to start out and be honest with you guys about something. Let me say this. Have you ever had so many good things happen to you in a short period of time that you just get to this place of almost feeling prideful, like look at all that I've done for myself? And so recently God has shown up in some powerful ways in my life, and He's revealed Himself in some real powerful ways. There was this camp I went to, a Bible camp, and it radically changed my life, just wrecked me. And I've been a believer for a while, and I've known about God pretty much my whole life. But at this camp, God showed up in a way that was just so real. I spent most of the weekend crying. And after the camp was over, it happens every 6 months, I started praying that my dad would go. And he's the kind of guy who's been a believer, and he's like, well, I don't really want to go. It's like, I don't want to leave home for the whole weekend and my whole family and everything. And well, he winds up going. And it's a miracle that he even went. And not only that, but in the camp, he got assigned at the exact same table in the exact same chair that I was at, just as a way of God kind of confirming that this was something that He wanted to happen. And the odds of that happening were probably 1 in 1,000, because there's over 120 guys at the camp. And he was assigned to the exact same seat at the exact same table. And I got to watch my dad's life get wrecked before God. And man, the relationships that he built over the weekend. And so that was a powerful thing for me to be a part of. My wife being pregnant, and the pregnancy has been going awesome. There was something that came up where she might have had some kind of diabetes, the one that you get during being pregnant, but they did some tests and she wound up not, and everything's just been going super great. And just the way that she's had a good attitude, she's been supporting, she still is plugging into God, trusting God. God's opened the door for us financially. We got back paid from Sarah's work recently. They've been taking extra money out for her medical stuff, and we got a large back pay check. I've gotten another job. I helped Charles work on his house, and he offered me a bunch of money. Charles is a friend of ours that actually just moved. But there's all these good things happening. He's placed some amazing people in our lives. The friends that we have, the community that we're a part of, our church, Celebrate Recovery, my family, my dad and parents and people in my family that are willing to go the extra mile for me, for us, without even asking. And it's like all these good things are happening in my life. And I got to this place where honestly, I started to think like, oh, I've got this. I'm good. Look at what I'm able to do. I'm able to position myself where I can get people to care for me and help me, and when I need it. And I started patting myself on the back like, oh man, look at what I've done for myself. Instead of having that eternally grateful heart of saying, wow, God, look at all that you've blessed me with. How can I take this and use it to benefit your kingdom? But instead I got this pridefulness to me. Like I have somehow achieved this on my own, or I somehow deserve this because of who I am and who I think I should be. And I just had this pridefulness about me that God had to bring to light. And I really want to go here. I want to go to Daniel chapter 4 to start. We're going to be going around a little bit, and whoever wants to follow, you can. If you don't have a Bible, I promise you I'm reading what's in this Bible, and I'm not making anything up. So Daniel 4 is talking about Nebuchadnezzar. King Nebuchadnezzar was the king of Babylon, and Babylon was the superpower of the world. It literally was the strongest nation, and everything was happening in Babylon. Everything. And King Nebuchadnezzar was king of pretty much the world at the time. And as one day he's thinking to himself, that same type of attitude, that same thought process, look at all that I've done for myself. Look at all that I have achieved. Look at all that I have. King Nebuchadnezzar got this prideful mindset. And soon after that, because he wouldn't give gratitude to God, because he wouldn't give God the glory, he was turned into a beast. Basically turned into a beast, where his hair grew long, his fingernails grew long, and his nails were like bird's claws. And he was warned about it. And the part that I want to pick up at is in verse 34 here. So Nebuchadnezzar is out grazing in the field, munching on grass. Remember, he was the greatest king, the greatest man of the whole world at the time. And here he is out in this field munching on grass. And in verse 34 it picks up and it says, at the end of days, I, Nebuchadnezzar, lifted my eyes to heaven, and my reasoning returned to me. And I blessed the Most High and praised and honored him who lives forever. For his dominion is an everlasting dominion, and his kingdom endures from generation to generation. All the inhabitants of the earth are accounted as nothing, and he does according to his will among the host of heaven and among the inhabitants of the earth. And none can stay his hand or say to him, what have you done? So what that's saying there is, even if we all, every single human being on earth, came together with all of the angels and all of the hosts of heaven, and we all came together and tried to say, God, whoa, what are you doing? That's not right. It would be of no account to him. He's so much higher above that. He's saying, nothing can stay the hand of God. Nothing. Not all the inhabitants of heaven or on earth could do it. And he finally gets this. At the same time, in verse 36, at the same time my reason returned to me. That's the pivotal point where he understands that nothing compares to God. First, it says, at the end of the days, I, Nebuchadnezzar, lifted my eyes to heaven, in verse 34. And then it goes on, and when he gives the credit to God and recognizes God for who he was, his reasoning returned to him. And for the glory of my kingdom, my majesty and splendor returned to me. My counselors and my Lord sought me, and I was established in my kingdom, and still more greatness was added to me. Now I, Nebuchadnezzar, praise and extol and honor the King of heaven, for all his works are right, and his ways are just. And those who walk in pride, he is able to humble. And those who walk in pride, he is able to humble. And God humbled me in the midst of my prideness. I just had to share that with you guys tonight. You know, maybe I'm up here teaching, but I had an issue with pride that needed to be dealt with. And I'm thankful that God was willing to do that in my heart, was willing to do that in my life. And I'm thankful that even though I still am tempted and sometimes fall into that same trap of the sin and the nastiness of sin, God is always there with his arm reached out. He's always there reaching out. He's never withdrawn his arm from any one of us. I like it how it says when he finally lifted his eyes to heaven, then his reasoning returned to him. When he finally noticed God and gave God the glory, his reasoning returned to him. You see, there's such a danger in not knowing God and walking with him, becoming reliant on self. It's that image of pride and being stuck in selfie mode, which we know well today with our selfie snapshots and being stuck in all about me mode. There's such a danger in that. So I want to go to Philippians 3:17. Paul is saying here in 17, brothers, join in imitating me, and keep your eyes on those who walk according to the example you have in us. For many of whom I have often told you, and now tell you even with tears, walk as enemies of the cross of Christ. Their end is destruction, their God is their belly, and they glory in their shame, with minds set on earthly things. Paul says in tears here, he says that there are still so many who walk as enemies of the cross. His heart is breaking for those who walk as enemies of the cross. And you see, what I really believe about this passage is, I believe that Paul's talking about those who were at one time committed believers, or those who have been going to church or were a part of a church at a time but got distracted with earthly things. You see, I think he's really talking about those who have at least been exposed to Jesus in some way. And his heart is heavy, saying that some of these people have fallen back into this way of living, and now they've become set on earthly things again, and his heart is breaking even to the point of tears. I think we all know someone in our life who's maybe been walking with Jesus to some degree, to some level. They've had a relationship with God, but now they've backslidden. Now they've drifted off back into worldly ways. I think we all have encountered someone like that in their life, or maybe we're even praying for them now. And even apart from that, there's still so many out there who are going to church Sunday after Sunday, Wednesday night after Wednesday night, Friday night after Friday night, always learning about Jesus, always learning about Jesus, message after message, teaching after teaching, lecture after lecture, PowerPoint after PowerPoint, but they've still not yet come to the actual knowledge of who Jesus is. You see, in our churches today, in our groups today, there are some who are coming. There's some who are showing up. There's some who have been even taking notes, everything. But they've never come to the knowledge yet of who Jesus really is. And I've been there. I've been there where all of my actions were lining up. I could put on a show where everything that I did made me look like I was spiritual and like I loved God, but my heart wasn't in it. My heart was gone. It looked like I loved Jesus. I could tell you scripture verses that I'd memorized. I could take a test about the Bible and probably do better than a lot. But my heart wasn't in it. And it was the same thing with Moses. When the Israelites were at the base of the mountain with Moses, and they're like, Moses, we don't need to hear from God again. Right after God speaks to them through thunder and lightning and the ground shakes, and they all are terrified of God. And they're like, Moses, we don't need to speak to him again. We trust you. You go and you talk to him for us, and we will hear from you. But everything that they were doing was right. They were following the laws. They were following the rules at the time. And God says to Moses, he says, oh, that my people would have a heart for me. You see, their words were right and their actions were right, but their heart wasn't right with God.
That's good.
And that's where Satan wants to get you. Maybe you don't even know if you really believe in God tonight. Maybe you don't even really know the importance of having a personal relationship with God tonight. Maybe you've been cut off. But that's all Satan wants to do to you, is he wants to take the fight out of you. He wants to take that spark, that fire out of you and kill it so that you won't seek for God anymore.
Come on.
So that you won't get on your knees and pray to God anymore for your unsaved loved ones who we just talked about, who are showing up, who are participating, who are taking notes, but their heart is not right with God. Is your heart right with God tonight? Do you understand the power of a relationship with the God of the universe, the creator of the universe? Acts 17 talks about, halfway through the chapter, it talks about how God is not, he doesn't dwell in things made by human hands or anything that we could create or come up with. And it goes on and talks about how this God, from the beginning, the foundation of the world, has set up boundaries and appointed times before you were even born, so that when you would come to places that he set up, the boundaries and the appointed times that he set up, you might actually have an encounter and meet with him there. Before the foundation of the universe, he was anticipating you showing up here tonight that you might encounter him. That's the God that we have. That's who Jesus is, and that's his heart toward us. Is that before you were even here, before you were even born, he had plans to know you intimately. And he's been waiting to know you more intimately. It doesn't matter how much you think you know God, how much you know about God, or even maybe how close you are to God. What matters is, are you still hungry to know him more? Do you have a hunger in your heart tonight to know him more?
Come on.
Because he's hungry to know you more tonight. He's hungry for that next moment that you'll spend time with him and not just talk like you're ordering food from a menu, but that you would spend time with him and listen to what he has to say. Because what He has for us is better than we could ever do for ourselves. And He's looking forward to that time with you. I don't know if you guys know Ron Allen, but a few weeks ago, Ron Allen taught at Celebrate Recovery, and he had a great message about how the disciples, after Jesus' resurrection, were walking on the road to, was it Antipas?
Emmaus.
Emmaus? Thank you. They were walking on the road to Emmaus, and they're talking amongst each other like, what happened? We thought this Messiah, we thought this Jesus was supposed to save us. He was supposed to make everything better. He was supposed to set things right. He was supposed to free us from our captivity. And they're discussing this with each other, and all of a sudden Jesus comes walking up in their midst. And they don't recognize Him. They're actually speaking, and He asks them, what are you guys talking about? What's going on? And they say to him, are you the lone person who hasn't heard about or seen what's happened over the last few days? That Jesus of Nazareth, supposedly the Messiah, was killed, and what now? And He's walking with them, and He's talking to them, and he's sharing this stuff with them and asking questions, and they're just having a regular conversation. All the while, they don't even recognize who Jesus is. My question to you guys now, is it possible to have been walking with Jesus? Is it possible to have been reading the Bible? Is it possible to have been praying but still not really know who Jesus is yet? Is it possible to be showing up to church, to be coming to these groups, but still not really know who He is? Because it happened to the disciples. This morning and today when I was working on this message, I was praying, just deeply praying, God, give me a heart for the people that show up tonight. Give me a heart that I would care even just a little bit as much as you do, to see that they might come to really know you in a deeper way. Like I said, maybe you already know God tonight. I'm praying that your heart is to know Him more. I'm praying that your heart is to experience Him more. I'm praying that your heart is to fall so in love with our Creator, our Messiah, that He's literally always on your mind. Do you really know Him tonight? Is your mind and your heart set on Him all the time? How are you spending your time? What do you do in your free time? What do you do when you're at work? What do you do when you're hanging out with family? Do you ever just have a moment where it's like, man, even this meeting, I just can't wait to get out of here because I want to go home and I want to just spend some more time with Jesus alone. I want to hear His voice again. I have some things I want to talk to Him about. Is that how real your relationship is with Jesus tonight? How are you spending your time? Because I promise you, if you seek Him, He will make Himself available all the time. If we don't spend our free time thinking about Jesus and spending time with Him, we're probably not spending time at work thinking about Him. We're probably not spending time with family or friends thinking much about Him. I remember back when I first really started to understand that to know God means relationship. It doesn't mean that you can tell me all about the Bible. It means relationship. I would be up in the middle of the night at this time, though, and I was reading the Bible 6, 7, 8 hours every day. And I was going through this struggle in my life where God was trying to pull me out of the drug world, and He was always dropping lines and everything for me to be able to get out. He never gives us more than we can handle. But I remember just spending hours reading the Bible, and I remember how real the struggle was. But I had to know Him, you guys. I had to know Him. And I would be in my room in the middle of the night, and I would open up the window so it wouldn't echo too loud inside, but I would open up the window and I would just start screaming out the window, Jesus! Jesus! I have to know you, Jesus. It became real to me to the point that I was willing to be humiliated in front of others. I had to know this Jesus. I remember just saying, God, I'm ready now. I get it. I'm ready now. Use me, Jesus. Use me. I'm ready. Use me, Jesus. Here I am, Jesus. Use me. It's about the time that we spend with Him. Just like when I first started dating Sarah, and we went on one date, and from that point on, I couldn't stop thinking about her. After we left the date, I think right away I started texting her again. I was thinking about her. When I got home, I was talking to my family about her. Before I went to bed, I called her. I was into her. I was committed to her, even after one date. And I kept texting her, and I kept thinking about her, and I kept talking about her. Or like a parent who's having a child, when that child is born, the way that you want to be close to them and spend time with them, and you tell your friends about your child, and you tell your family about your child, and you're kind, you're loving, you're compassionate, you're supportive. These are all examples of what it's like to have a heart for someone or something. If we want to know Jesus, if we need Him in our lives, if it needs to be more real, are you always thinking about Him? Are you always talking to Him? When you're not with Him or in His presence in an intimate way, are you speaking to others about Him? Are you texting Him? Are you guys friends on Facebook? But no, really, if someone looked at your Facebook right now, would they know that you're a Christian, that you're sold out, that your heart is for Jesus? It's about the time that we spend with Him, and it's about what's in your heart. How much of Him is in your heart tonight? So I do want to ask you guys, what's in your heart tonight? Are you really hungry for more of Jesus? God has answered my prayer because I wanted to be able to look out into the room tonight, and I wanted to be able to see the faces of whoever showed up. And I said, God, would you just break my heart for them, that they would understand how real this is, that they would understand how important this is, how valuable this is, something to be cherished, something that they could take with them and they could hold on to for the rest of their life, and it would get them through, and not just get them through, but it would be plentiful in their life. And He answered that prayer because My heart is just for you guys right now. My heart is so for each one of you right now, wherever you're at. It doesn't matter what you do or what you've done. Starting now, it matters what He's done and what He can do in you and through you. It doesn't matter what you've done or what you do. It matters who He is and what He wants to do in you. It's easy to make time for things that we care about. It really is. If we care about it enough, we will make time for it. If we care about God enough, we will make time for God. God, I just pray right now, God, put it in our hearts a hunger to make time for you, Jesus. Put it in our hearts a real, truthful hunger to make time for you. You see, we have time for our family. We have time for work. We have time for friends. We have time for our ministry. We have time for ourselves, time to do the things that we love, time to watch TV, time to be on the computer, time to be on the cell phone, time for gardening, time for everything, but we don't make time for Jesus. Not like we could. I just hope you guys are getting this tonight. It's about relationship with Jesus. It's about who He is and what He really wants to do in you. Because I promise you, His heart is for you guys. He wants to spend that time with you. And it's not just about spending time with the air and thinking whatever. God is real. And He shows up in your life. He answers prayers. He heals people. He restores all the junk that you're holding on to. He restores that and replaces it with joy and gladness and excitement and hope and peace. He's real. What He wants to do is real. He doesn't promise us new cars. He doesn't promise us a new house. He doesn't even promise us finances. But He says, trust in me, and I will provide everything that you need, and you will be content in the midst of it. You will be overflowing with contentness in the midst of it. So I just want to go to one last place to wrap it up. You guys, this is everything. This is everything. You guys are getting a real deal tonight. This is what it's all about. Psalm 37. Man, God, we love you tonight, Jesus. Thank you. 37, Psalm 37 in verse 4. Psalm 37 verse 4, delight yourself in the Lord. Delight yourself in the Lord, and He will give you the desires of your heart. Commit your way to the Lord. Trust in Him, and He will act. He will bring forth your righteousness as the light and your justice as noonday. As this is what it's all summed up tonight into is, do you take delight in the Lord? Is your joy the Lord? Is your joy Jesus? When you wake up in the morning, is the first person that you think about Jesus? When you're at work, is Jesus always on your mind? When you go to bed at night, is the last person you think about Jesus? Are you excited to know Him? Do you delight in Him? Do you have joy in Him? Are you happy to spend time with Him? Because He's saying, look at what He says here. He says, delight yourself in me, and I might give you the desires of your heart. That's not what he says. He says, delight yourself in me, take joy in me, and I will give you the desires of your heart. But understanding that taking delight and taking joy in God, that's something that really happens. But when our heart is aligned with God's heart, we're not hoping for all these worldly things. Delighting ourselves in God does not mean that I'm going to say, God, I really like and appreciate you today, and hope in your heart or in your mind that He's going to drop a $100 bill on your lap or a new car or something. Delighting in God is saying, I don't care about any of it. I don't care about any of it. God, to know you is enough for me. Just to know you is enough for me. He says, get to that place. Take delight in Him and watch what He does. Watch Him move. Father, Jesus, thank you for showing up tonight. Man, thank you, God, for your word. Thank you that you meet us where we're at.